The silence in the house was usually comforting, a testament to the life Elena and Mark had built over 20 years. It was a silence bought with high ceilings, thick insulation, and a zip code that discouraged through traffic. But tonight, the silence felt heavy, like the pressure drop before a storm. Elena sat at the mahogany desk in Mark's study. The glow of the monitor, the only light in the room. It was tax season. Usually, their accountant handled everything, but a notification from the IRS regarding an unreported gift had flagged their joint filing. Mark was asleep upstairs, exhausted from what he claimed was a grueling week of merger negotiations. "It has to be a clerical error," Elena muttered, adjusting her glasses. She logged into their main portal. The numbers looked fine, but the IRS flag pointed to a routing number she didn't recognize. She possessed Mark's passwords. They had always operated on a policy of total transparency, or so she thought. She navigated to the transfer history. There, buried under a label simply marked Consulting Retainer, was a monthly auto transfer. $5,000 here, $10,000 there. She clicked deeper. The consulting retainer wasn't going to a firm. It was feeding into a secondary account at a different bank. Elena's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She used Mark's biographical data to reset the password for the secondary bank. It took 3 tries, but she got in. The screen refreshed, and the balance stared back at her. Or rather, the lack of one. The transaction history was a bleeding wound. Tiffany & Co., $12,000. The Ritz-Carlton, Paris, $8,500. Porsche Leasing, $2,200. Monthly. Venmo Chloe, S., $5,000. Elena scrolled, her breath hitching. This wasn't a one-time slip-up. This was a lifestyle. She pulled up the calculator app on her phone and began to add up the withdrawals over the last 36 months. Her fingers trembled as she punched in the numbers. When she hit the equal sign, she felt bile rise in her throat. $1,140,000. She stared at the door of the study, listening for Mark's footsteps. He was upstairs, sleeping soundly, likely dreaming of the man he pretended to be. He hadn't just cheated on her. He had stolen their retirement, their security, and their trust to fund a fantasy. Elena didn't cry. The shock was too absolute for tears. Instead, a cold, crystalline clarity washed over her. She took a screenshot. Then another. She downloaded the entire transaction history to an external drive. She wiped the browser history, turned off the monitor, and sat in the dark. $1.1 million. The price of her marriage. Elena woke up the next morning before the alarm. She watched Mark sleep. He looked peaceful, his handsome face relaxed, completely unaware that the woman lying next to him was currently dissecting his life. "Morning, love," he mumbled, reaching for her. Elena forced a smile, her skin crawling as his hand brushed her shoulder. "Morning, big day?" "Huge," he said, stretching. "Last prep for the Dubai trip next week." "Right, Dubai." Once Mark left for the office, Elena called in sick. She didn't work for a boss, she was a partner at an interior design firm, but she cleared her schedule. She had a new project, the demolition of Mark's life. She needed a face to go with the name, Chloe. It didn't take long. The bank statements were sloppy. One transaction for a flower delivery included a residential address in the city. Elena drove there. It was a high-end condo building, one with a doorman and a view of the park. She sat in her Range Rover, sipping lukewarm coffee, waiting. At 10:30 a.m., a woman walked out. She was young, perhaps 25, with cascading blonde hair and holding a small dog. She was wearing a tennis bracelet Elena recognized because Mark had claimed he bought a similar one for his mother last Christmas. Elena pulled down the visor. She watched the woman, Chloe, laugh at something on her phone. She looked happy. She looked expensive. Elena took a photo with her telephoto lens, not for court, but for fuel. She drove back to the suburbs, her mind racing. She started digging into the investments Mark had claimed to make. The vacation rental in Aspen, sold 2 years ago. The vintage wine collection, the cellar was locked, but Elena found the key. It was half empty. He wasn't just spending income, he was liquidating assets she thought were secure. He was hollowing out their marriage from the inside, like a termite infestation. She sat on the floor of the wine cellar, surrounded by the empty racks. He had stolen $1.1 million, but the betrayal was worth far more. She realized then that a divorce would take years, lawyers would fight, assets would be frozen, he would hide more money. "No," she whispered to the empty bottles, "I'm not waiting for a judge." Mr. Vance was the kind of lawyer who wore three-piece suits and smiled like a shark sensing blood in the water. He had handled Elena's father's estate, and he was the only person she trusted to keep his mouth shut. She laid the spreadsheet on his mahogany desk. Vance put on his reading glasses, scanned the columns, and let out a low whistle. "And you're sure about these figures?" "I have the bank statements, the receipts, and the photos," Elena said, her voice steady. "I want a divorce, Arthur. But I don't want a fair split. He spent over $1 million of marital funds on her. If we split now, he gets half of what's left. That means he effectively steals from me twice." Vance leaned back, tenting his fingers. "The law is a blunt instrument, Elena. We can argue dissipation of assets, but that takes time. Forensic accountants. Depositions. I don't have time. He leaves for Dubai on Monday. I have 10 days. Vance looked at her, assessing her resolve. "Do you remember 5 years ago? Mark had that scare with his heart arrhythmia." "Yes. We did our estate planning. You both signed broad, durable powers of attorney," Vance said, opening a file drawer. He pulled out a thick document to allow the other spouse to manage business affairs, real estate, and banking if the other was incapacitated or unavailable. Elena looked at the document. "Unavailable? It's a broad term," Vance said, a glint in his eye. "If he is out of the country, and you determine it is in the best interest of the estate to liquidate assets to, say, cover liabilities, or rebalance the portfolio, you have the legal authority to do so." Elena picked up the document. Her signature was there. So was Mark's. "He never revoked this?" she asked. "No. Most people forget they exist until they need them." Elena felt a smile form, sharp and dangerous. "He's going to be unavailable for 10 days, Arthur. I think it's time to rebalance the portfolio." Vance closed the folder. "Hypothetically, if you were to sell joint assets, the proceeds would simply need to be accounted for. If the husband has already spent his share via unauthorized withdrawals, the remaining liquid cash could be argued to be solely the wife's property." "Hypothetically," Elena agreed. The weekend leading up to Mark's departure was an exercise in psychological torture. Elena had to be the doting wife. She packed his suitcase. She folded his shirts. She even bought him a new travel kit, tucking a note inside that read, "Have the trip you deserve." Mark was giddy. He was trying to hide it, but the anticipation of 2 weeks with Chloe was leaking out of him. He checked his phone constantly. He hummed while he showered. "I'm going to miss you." He lied over dinner on Sunday night. He reached across the table to take her hand. Elena didn't flinch. She squeezed his hand back. "I know, honey, but you've been working so hard, you need this break." "The deal in Dubai is complex," he said, layering the lie. "But if it goes through, we're set for life." "We're set," Elena thought. "You're done." "I was thinking," Elena said casually, "while you're gone, I might have the carpets cleaned. Maybe do some deep decluttering. You know how I get when I'm bored." Mark waved a hand dismissively. "Do whatever you want. Just don't throw away my golf clubs." "I wouldn't dream of it," she said. She wouldn't throw them away. She knew exactly what a set of custom Callaway clubs went for on the secondary market. That night, as Mark slept, Elena sat in the living room with a clipboard. She wasn't just looking at furniture, she was looking at inventory. The Eames lounge chair, the grand piano nobody played, the artwork they had collected over a decade. She had already lined up the auction house. They were specialists in distressed assets and quick liquidations. They didn't ask questions as long as the paperwork was signed. And thanks to Mr. Vance, she had the paperwork. She looked at Mark one last time as the sun came up. He looked innocent in sleep. It was the last time she would ever see him that way. The Uber arrived at 5 a.m. Mark kissed Elena on the cheek, the smell of his expensive cologne lingering in the air. "I'll call you when I land," he said. "Don't worry about it," Elena said, leaning in the doorway. "Roaming charges are a nightmare. Just focus on the deal. You're the best," he said, flashing that charming smile that had disarmed her 20 years ago. He got into the car and didn't look back. Elena watched the taillights disappear down the long driveway. She stood there for a full minute, letting the morning air cool her skin. Then, she turned around, walked back inside, and locked the door. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she had saved as cleanup. "He's gone," she said. "You can bring the trucks." By 7 a.m., the driveway was full. 2 massive moving trucks blocked the entrance. A team of appraisers from the auction house swarmed the foyer. "Everything?" The lead auctioneer, a woman named Sarah, asked. She looked around the opulent living room. "This is good stuff, Mrs. Sterling. We usually need weeks to catalog." "You have 3 days," Elena said, handing her a tablet with the inventory list. "I don't care about getting top dollar. I care about empty rooms. If it's not bolted down, it goes. If it is bolted down, unbolt it." "And the cars?" "The towing company is on the way." Elena walked through the house, tagging items with color-coded stickers: red for auction, blue for donation, green for the trash. She didn't feel sentimental. Every object in the house felt tainted, bought with money that should have been their future, or kept by a man who was laughing at her in a hotel room with a 24-year-old. She walked into Mark's study. His diploma was on the wall. She took it down and dropped it in the trash bin. The frame, however, was sterling silver. She put a red sticker on the frame. "Let's get to work," she said. The rumor mill in their gated community was faster than fiber optic internet. By the time the estate sale signs went up on Wednesday, the neighbors were buzzing. Elena had framed it as a radical downsizing and a spiritual cleanse before a move to Europe. People loved a tragedy, but they loved a bargain more. The auction was held on the front lawn and inside the main hall. It was a frenzy. The wealthy neighbors, people Mark had tried to impress for years, were now haggle-fighting over his humidor and his collection of limited-edition scotch. "I can't believe you're parting with this," Mrs. Gable from next door said, clutching a vase that Mark had bought in Italy. Mark loved this piece. "Mark is entering a new phase of his life," Elena said smoothly, taking the check. "He wants to travel light." Inside, the movers were stripping the rooms. The dining table, a massive slab of walnut that seated 12, was disassembled and carried out. The leather sofas followed. The 85-inch television was sold to the poolboy for cash. It was chaotic, loud, and incredibly efficient. Elena sat in the kitchen, the only room not yet stripped, managing the flow of money. Checks were deposited instantly via mobile app. Cash was counted and bundled. There was a savage joy in it. Every time an item left the house, Elena felt lighter. She was erasing him. She was erasing the lie. By Friday afternoon, the house echoed. The rugs were gone, revealing the hardwood floors. The walls were bare, leaving pale squares where paintings had hung. The only thing left in the living room was a single folding card table and one metal chair. Sarah, the auctioneer, approached her with a thick stack of receipts. "We cleared 90% of the inventory. The rest went to charity. Net proceeds after commission are substantial." "Wire it," Elena said. "Wire it all to the new account." She looked around the empty shell of her life. It didn't look like a home anymore. It looked like a house waiting for its next victim. But she wasn't done yet. Selling a multi-million-dollar home usually takes months. Staging, open houses, negotiations. Elena didn't have months. She had a text message from a real estate shark she knew, named Gold. Gold bought distressed properties, usually from bankruptcies or divorces, paid cash, and closed in a week. He was a vulture, but vultures were necessary for cleaning up carcasses. Gold walked through the empty rooms, his footsteps echoing loudly. He checked the foundation, flushed the toilet, and tapped the walls. "It's empty," Gold noted. "Usually I have to pay to evict the furniture." "It's ready for immediate possession," Elena said. "Title is clean. Power of attorney is recorded. I can sign the deed today." "The market is soft," Gold said, trying to lowball her. "And it needs updating. The kitchen is 2018. Cut the crap." "Gold," Elena said, leaning against the granite counter. "The land alone is worth $2 million. I'm asking for $1.8 million for a quick close. You can flip it for $2.5 by summer. Do you want it or not?" Gold looked at her. He saw the dark circles under her eyes, but also the steel in her spine. He knew a woman on a mission when he saw one. "I can have the wire in escrow by Monday, closing Tuesday." Done. They shook hands. It was the biggest asset they owned. Mark loved this house. He loved the address. He loved telling people he lived at the Gables. He identified with the structure. Elena signed the preliminary papers on the kitchen island. She felt a phantom weight lift off her chest. She wasn't just selling a house, she was selling the stage where he had performed his lies. One condition, Elena said. Yeah? You change the locks the minute the deed records. And you don't let anyone in without a key, not even the former owner. Gold smirked. Especially not the former owner. Got it. The garage was Mark's sanctuary. It was climate-controlled, floored with checkered epoxy, and smelled of tire shine and wax. This was where the crown jewel lived. A 1988 Porsche 911 Turbo Guards Red. Mark spent more time touching that car than he did touching Elena. There was also the Range Rover Elena's daily driver, which was in her name, so she kept it, and Mark's Tesla Plaid. Elena stood before the Porsche. It was beautiful, undeniably. But to her, it just looked like $150,000 of trapped equity. She called a specialized dealer, a man who had been pestering Mark to sell for years. Mrs. Sterling? The dealer sounded surprised. You want the 911? Elena asked. Is Mark finally ready to part with it? Mark is unavailable. I'm handling his affairs. I have the title and the authority. If you can bring a transporter and a cashier's check within the hour, it's yours. How much? Elena named a price that was about 20% below market value. It was a painful cut, but she needed speed. She needed it gone before Mark checked his email or got a notification from his insurance company. The dealer arrived in 40 minutes. He inspected the car with a flashlight, looking for scratches that didn't exist. Mark treated the car like an infant. It's pristine, the dealer admitted. He handed over the check. As the winch pulled the red Porsche up onto the flatbed truck, Elena felt a pang of guilt. Not for Mark, but for the car. It was innocent, but it was collateral damage in the war. Next was the Tesla. She simply drove it to CarMax. She didn't have the energy to haggle. She took their offer, signed the papers, and took the check. She stood in the empty garage. The oil stains on the floor were the only evidence that cars had ever been there. She swept the floor. She wanted it clean. She wanted nothing left behind. She looked at her bank app. The balance was climbing. The auction money, the house deposit, the cars. The number was getting large. But when she subtracted the $1.1 million Mark had stolen, the remainder, her share was finally starting to look fair. It was Tuesday, day 9 of Mark's trip. According to his Instagram, which he thought was private, but Elena viewed through a burner account, he and Chloe were enjoying a sunset dinner in the Maldives. He looked tan. He looked happy. Elena sat in Mr. Vance's office. The final tally was in. Total liquidation proceeds, Vance read from the ledger. $2.4 million, roughly, plus the remaining cash in the joint accounts. Okay, Elena said. Now, the math. Mark withdrew $1.14 million over 3 years, Vance said. Under the equitable distribution theory, we are applying, albeit aggressively, we are treating that $1.14 million as his advance on the division of assets. So, Elena said, if the total pot was roughly $3.5 million including the stolen money, half is $1.75 million. Correct. Since he has already taken $1.14 million, he is owed roughly $600,000. However, Vance paused, adjusting his glasses. We have to deduct the mortgage payoff, the broker fees, the taxes, and the penalty fees for early liquidation. Elena smiled. And my legal fees, and the cost of the movers, and the auctioneer's commission. Precisely. Vance did the calculations. After all, debts are settled, and your half is secured in your separate trust. Mark's remaining share comes out to, he tapped the calculator, $43.50. Elena laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. $43. We are pushing the envelope, Elena, Vance warned. He will sue. He will scream. But possession is 9/10 of the law. The money is in a trust in the Cook Islands now. He can sue, but he won't have the money to pay a lawyer to find it. He doesn't have a house to live in, Elena said, or a car to drive to court. Where will you go? I rented a villa in Tuscany for 6 months, Elena said, paid in full. My flight leaves tonight. She signed the final transfer orders. The joint account, the savings, the investment portfolio, everything was drained. The money whooshed through the digital ether, landing safely in accounts Mark couldn't touch. Mark landed at JFK on Thursday evening. He was sunburnt and exhausted, but high on the thrill of the affair. He had successfully juggled 2 weeks of lies. He turned on his primary phone. A barrage of notifications flooded the screen. Bank of America, low balance alert. Chase, low balance alert. Amex, payment past due. ADT Security, system offline. What the hell? Mark muttered. He tried to call Elena, straight to voicemail. He walked to the limo pickup area. He usually had a car waiting. There was no one. He checked his app. The ride service had been canceled. Irritated, he tried to book an Uber. Payment declined. He frowned, trying a different card. Declined. Panic began to prickle at the back of his neck. He called the bank. The automated voice told him the wait time was 40 minutes. He didn't have 40 minutes. He checked his mobile banking app. Balance, $0. System error, he said aloud, laughing nervously. Has to be a hack. He found a taxi that took cash. He had $200 in his wallet left over from the trip. He gave the driver the address in Connecticut. The ride took an hour. Mark spent the whole time trying to reach Elena, his office, anyone. No one answered. As the taxi turned into the subdivision, Mark felt a sense of dread he couldn't explain. The streets looked the same, but the vibe was wrong. The taxi pulled up to the driveway. Mark stared. The house was dark. Not just lights off dark, it was dead dark. There were no landscape lights. The curtains were gone from the windows, leaving them looking like hollow eyes. "This is it, buddy," the driver said. Mark handed him the cash and got out. He dragged his suitcase up the driveway. The wind blew leaves across the porch. The grand potted plants that usually flanked the door were gone. He reached for his keys. He slid the key into the lock. It didn't turn. He jiggled it. Nothing. He tried the back door key. Nothing. "Elena!" he shouted, pounding on the door. The sound echoed, hollow and booming, as if the house behind the door was a cavern. Mark found a rock in the garden bed and smashed the small pane of glass near the handle of the back door. He reached in, unlocked it, and stepped inside. The smell hit him first. It didn't smell like lavender and lemon anymore. It smelled of dust and vacancy. He flipped the light switch. Nothing happened. The electricity had been cut or the bulbs were gone. He used his phone flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating. Nothing. The kitchen island was bare. The bar stools were gone. He ran into the living room. The Persian rug, the sofas, the paintings gone. It was just floorboards and walls. "Elena," his voice cracked. He ran upstairs, his footsteps thundering in the empty house. The bedroom was stripped. The bed was gone. The closet. His closet was empty. His suits, his shoes, his watches, all gone. He ran to the garage. Empty. No Porsche, no Tesla, just a broom leaning against the wall. He slumped against the wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. He wasn't hacked, he had been erased. He went back to the living room. In the center of the vast, empty floor sat a single folding card table. On it was a small battery-operated lantern, casting a dim circle of light. Beside the lantern was a thick manila envelope. Mark crawled toward it. His hands shook as he opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of papers. The first page was a spreadsheet. It was titled The Chloe Ledger. It listed every dollar he had spent, the dates, the hotels, the jewelry. The total at the bottom was circled in red marker. $1,142,390. Underneath that was a second sheet, a settlement statement. Total assets, liquidated, $2,400,000. Less husband's prior withdrawals, negative $1,142,390. Less liquidation fees and mortgages, negative $1,257,566.50. Balance due to husband. Tape clipped to the bottom of the page was a cashier's check. Paid to the order of Mark Sterling. Amount, $43.50 over 100. Mark stared at the check. The number defied logic. He had been a millionaire 2 weeks ago. Now, he had $43.50 and a suitcase full of dirty laundry. He found a letter beneath the check. It was handwritten in Elena's elegant script. "Mark, I hope Dubai was worth it. Or was it the Maldives? The receipts were a little confusing. You spent our retirement on a fantasy. so I spent the rest of our reality ensuring I didn't end up destitute. I sold it all, Mark. The house closes on Tuesday. The new owners are developers. They're tearing it down. You have until then to vacate. Don't bother looking for the money. It's in a trust structure that even Mr. Vance said was aggressive. By the time you find a lawyer who will work on contingency, because you can't afford a retainer, I'll be gone. I left you the phone charger in the kitchen. I figured you'd need it to call Chloe. Maybe she has a couch you can crash on. Though, considering the lease on her apartment was in your name and I canceled the auto pay, she might be looking for a place too. Goodbye, Mark. Elena. Mark dropped the letter. He looked around the dark, empty house. The silence was deafening. He had built this life for 20 years and dismantled it in 3. His phone buzzed. It was Chloe. Baby, my card got declined at Sephora, and the landlord just called saying rent wasn't paid. Call me back as soon as possible. Mark let the phone drop to the floor. He looked at the check for $43.50. He started to laugh. It was a manic, broken sound that bounced off the bare walls. He laughed until his ribs hurt, until the laughter turned into a dry, heaving sob. He curled up on the hardwood floor of the house he no longer owned, in the dark, clutching the check. Thousands of miles away, on a terrace overlooking a vineyard in Tuscany, Elena poured a glass of Chianti. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the hills. Her phone was off. Her new bank account was full. She took a sip of wine. It tasted like freedom.